Hi, David.
Hi, Sarah.
There's something that you mention a lot, and in all the recordings we've made so far, it's probably come into every single one, and it's so central to your work. And I think many people, when they hear the words, it's like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool, but they won't understand what you're actually talking about. So I would really like to explore with you what is the spirit body? And how does that link with the body and the spirit?
So, um, ages ago, I used spirit energy without even knowing I used it. Like when I said before, I talked about how I just did flowing prayers and that sort of thing. And I didn't even realize that I actually used this huge spirit body or spirit presence, if you like. It was just, it was more like a natural thing that you did, like a natural progression. And then later on, when I couldn't channel properly and my life wasn't really turning out exactly how it should, and I had to go back to all the basics again and basically reinvigorate my life, if you like, and figure out what I was doing wrong and why I'd made such very many crappy decisions because um, my intuition wasn't working as well as what it used to, and my instinct wasn't working as well as it should. And um, in general, life in certain parts was okay, but I had a lot of parts that were really, really bland, and some parts that were just there was almost nothing there. Like life really didn't. Yeah, like on the outset, a lot of people said, "Man, you've got such a really good life. You know, you've got a great." They thought I had it all. You know, I was an executive chef of a really large hotel. Um, I had a brand new house, everything in it. You know, I had a wife who, on the outset, looked was pretty good looking, except but and it just looked like I basically had it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, except it was just everything really, really wasn't working. Nothing was really working, you know? You don't have that joy. You really don't have that joy. And you'd think you have all these different things in your life that you'd feel a lot more grateful. You'd feel a lot more spontaneity to do things. And it was just going through the motions, really. Life was really bland. So I had to go back and figure out a lot more things. And one of the things that it's a bit like when we have trouble, or I'll often say when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, we all go back to the heart. But the heart is sort of like the heart is really your interpreter, it's your messenger. So what I needed to do then was actually go back and reinvigorate where everything starts because um, I knew enough of my energy to know that my energy was really, it wasn't really working. You know, it was so bland. It was moving in certain parts, but I knew that my whole energy system was so underrated. It just was just limping along and really doing nothing. So this is when I went back and started from the very basics again. And that's when I started to make sure that I reintroduced my soul. So it's not, when we think about soul, as soon as I say soul, everybody gets, oh, it's this sacred thing. You know, it's like this sacred cow. You aren't meant to use your soul. It's like this untouchable thing. It's like, oh, only my priest can do that, or only my whatever. You know what I mean? But it's your soul. You can do whatever you like with it. But I want to take your spirit out of all religious context, so to speak, because everybody has this amazing spirit energy. And to make your spirit energy work, what we do is we have to use our spirit soul and we have to use our spirit heart. And we have to make it actually work, because it's just sitting there um, quite in a state of, in a lot of cases, it's completely and utterly unconscious in a sort of, well, we're completely unconscious of it. We're sort of aware of it in a subliminal way, in a sort of unconscious way, but in a lot of ways, it is completely what has been described to me as out of conscious, in that it isn't functional to ourself. It's just there, but we're not actually using it functionally. So what I teach people is and how to actually go in and find your soul, because we have to learn how to resense first of all, rather than go on physical feelings and emotions and all that sort of thing. We completely nullify that, and we go into as very quickly. And that's as soon as we teach people how to ground, and we'll go into that in our next segment probably. When we go in and we teach people how to sense, we find all these underlying properties that are more or less the basis of our whole persona. They're the basis of our energy. They're the basis of our consciousness. And our spirit energy is the thing that develops all our superpowers, if you like. It develops our strength, inner strength. It develops our consciousness. It develops every single commodity of our life that we could possibly outline or try to underpin. And yet, until we experience it, it is more or less just something that we might think is just, oh, it's just there. Because if I say, where's your soul? And one of the things is, as you know, Sarah, I teach people how to go in and actually feel their soul. And you can almost, I don't often tell people where we're going straight off. and I will, as you've experienced, yeah, I've sort of said, okay, you can feel that there. And what do you feel? And sometimes people are smiling straight away and they're not hesitant straight at all. And I said, okay, that's your soul energy. That's your soul. Where we're going now is you're actually starting to touch your soul. And once we actually go into your soul, we find this beautiful component of ourselves, and it is a foundation of us, and we all have one, and we've got to use it, because otherwise, as we go back to the heart and we think the heart has all the answers, but just think of it this way. We send a lot of messages through, and the heart is like the last component that we know where we get answers from. So we think the heart has all the answers, but the heart is really just the interpreter. It tells us what the soul is actually telling us. So
there's something I want to put in there. This is, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but it somehow feels important because people talk so much about the heart these days.
Yeah.
And when you started talking about it, these images came to me of like the bleeding heart and the broken heart. And the heart, there's so much feeling in there as well as sensing. And so it doesn't have that kind of, the soul, you somehow we do talk about a broken soul, but it isn't, I don't think it is a broken soul. The soul has a kind of indestructible source quality to it that the heart doesn't have, and it feels really important to me to distinguish between those qualities. Is that how you see it? Something similar?
It is. The soul is this, it is so strong. I mean, your soul never really goes away. I mean, we do always in a way use it, but I think what we need to do is learn how to distinguish, how to use it more usefully. Yeah.
Oh, I so agree with you. I
Because
honestly, I just look around people and I feel like it's the soul that enables you to experience joy and the things that everybody's looking for without that being kind of free to breathe inside you. Like so much of the time we just crush our souls and we don't even realize we're doing it.
we do, and it's really interesting because I give a strange analogy to um, when we use our soul, because, and some people may not have thought about it this way, but I teach people how to go so far in when we're sensing and when we touch the soul, yeah. But when we touch the soul, if we just touch it, then it's a bit like we. You imagine you're a child and you got $100. You've gone to the shop and you can't actually buy anything because you can't actually get in there, because if we've got to use a certain type of energy or we can't get in there. And that's why I teach people how to use this neutral energy, because then you can go in. Otherwise, if you use over negative, over positive energy, you can't get in. It's like,
Yeah,
do
you
not
can't
enter.
touch it,
You
can you?
can't touch it.
It's
That's all
protected.
you can do, is you can touch it. And then people get quite angry, or um, because you can't do anything. It's like you've got this invisible energy. Hey, it's me. Why can't I use my soul? But you can't actually communicate with your own soul until you learn how to use neutral energy to actually communicate with it, because that's the energy it uses, and it's the universal language. Because once we start to use this beautiful universal language, and I know because I've gone to so many different donkeys years ago. I mean, it's gone back 30 something years, and I went to um, a lot of healing clinics, and I'd be talking to people, and you'd see people sort of basically forcing energy, and I said, look, if you use neutral energy, you can go in there, but it's hard. It's one of those things. Everybody has to actually experience it, the limitlessness of it, so that you can actually engage the universal neutral energy, and allows you to go deep into this soul. And oh my God, you pull these souls out, and it's got so many different commodities of it. And then we learn so many different vast areas of ourselves that we haven't actually been locking into. And it's the same when we go into the spirit heart, because the spirit heart, it's an interpreter. It interprets so many things that we've just been missing. And then it's
But
all
can I
just
just, I
basic
just,
stuff.
I need to ask you. So you've mentioned the soul, and we get really a sense like we can really connect with that. And then a little while ago, you talked about the spirit soul, and you've mentioned the heart, and you've mentioned the spirit heart, and we
Yep.
started off talking about the spirit body. So I'm
Okay.
going to be a bit picky here, but I'd really like to get more of a picture or share more of a picture so that
So,
people who are
so,
exploring can understand what's the spirit soul and how did
so
what compared to
your
the
spirit
soul.
heart and your spirit soul are the basis of every single person. So I'm not talking about your physical heart, because there's a more physical heart, physical soul. But when we use our spirit heart, I mean, we talk about the spirit of absolutely everything, yeah. But we
Ah,
sometimes think
I'm
it's
beginning to get it.
yeah, we often think this heart and this soul, as soon as we go into there, we're going into the spirit. No, you're not.
So it's almost like there's a tangible soul there, but the spirit soul is the that really
It's the
intangible
eternal
part. And
part. It's the
there's a heart that can be the heart that also that feels. It's the heart that pumps and does all of that, but it
it's
also feels.
basically,
But there's
well,
a
even
spirit
if you're
heart.
talking, yeah, it
Yeah, that
has,
we
it uses universal energy, and
okay.
as it opens up, it has this very tangible part, that this is the part where all the strength comes from. And when we think about spirit, sometimes people, when as soon as they talk about spirit, they think we've got to use our heart to get our spirit. Well, what we've got to actually do is all spirit is completely 50-50 soul and heart. Absolutely, all everything comes together. And that's how our senses communicate with us. And it opens up all these different things that we've been missing. And it's like a whole new language that everybody um, has completely been missing, because it tells us where we actually invest our energy, where we invest our love, where we invest everything. Because we invest, we invest, we invest, we invest with time, love, intuition, instinct. We invest every all our day. That's all we do. We just go around investing in this and this and this. But in a way, it's so that we actually learn how to. It's how we learn to receive. Yeah.
So when we're in touch with our soul and our heart, and then with specifically the spirit soul and the spirit heart, that which gives us information, that's also because that puts us in touch with the love, kind of the foundational love, which is life. And so it means we're coming from a place where we can, to put it in that investment language we just used, we can assess our investment, we can make decisions because we're coming from the right place inside us. Whereas when we come from the mind, for example, alone, or just our physical senses, we're not in touch with that life energy, actually the universal energy, which is also love energy, which enables us to find the ethical and the truthful and what's actually good for us and what's wise. We're just not in touch with that anymore. So we're missing the core components of any decision.
We also, and that's the biggest thing, because what this teaches us to do, once we learn how to use our soul and our heart, we go on and we start questioning everything. So everything, every link that we make, we question, rather than just say, oh, my heart or my soul is telling me how to do everything. It's like you question everything, so that we learn a new way to know what we need. We learn a new way what we don't need. We don't then it's just not like we do stuff because other people have told us so, or we learn a whole new language of self-truth.
And because we're connected with the spirit, we actually have the spirit to be able to question things, because often
right.
otherwise you don't have the courage, which is also connected with spirit in that way.
Exactly right. And what people don't realize is that the spirit is such a massive component of ourselves, one that probably most people don't think of as and I'll give you two accounts, and I've already talked to one. Like when I said people have postpartum or postnatal depression, it's where you invest all this love in a child, and a lot of your love then, but it's basically your spirit goes into that child, and then a lot of the child's spirit comes back into you, and it's sort of like a crossover. But what happens is that you've put so much love in, and because you didn't often, for highly sensitive people, you're pouring so much love into this child, and then you feel like there's nothing left after you've given birth to this child. There's nothing left. So
you've lost yourself, actually. Lost the essence of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You have to bring the spirit back to yourself, and it's very transferable. The other thing is, I give a lot of my time to an organization called Helping Parents Heal, and it's where obviously when a child dies before the parents, it's an incredibly traumatic time. And what happens is when the child passes over, often the parent spirit will follow them to the other side. And until you bring that spirit back, they've got very little hope of learning how to heal or get over the grief, you know. And yeah, our spirit it's such a big commodity of ourselves, and it's one of those things everybody says, oh, just think differently, you've got to do this, or you've got to use your conscious to do that. Well, until you use your spirit, nothing's going to stick. It doesn't matter what you do, it just is not going to stick.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. So what's the spirit body?
So the spirit, this once we start to learn how to use our spirit soul and our spirit heart, it creates a spirit body, basically. And this, as this comes together, it also has a consciousness, it has a relevance. And as soon as we do that, it opens up a lot of tangible parts of consciousness so that we can then connect lots of different types of consciousness together all in one time. So if you imagine we have so many formidable types of conscious, like most people just think of consciousness as a conscious, like just subconscious, your everyday living conscious, subliminal, or whatever level of conscious you want to talk about. Yeah. But I just usually just put it into those four because it's really easy to bring them all together rather than going through so many different types. But we have so many in our everyday makeup. We have so many different types of conscious, and they're a bit like whatever commodity of yourself you can think of. They're really basically a conglomerate of something. Yeah. So your heart's this massive conglomerate. It has so many different commodities in that heart. Your soul has so many commodities in it, and they all join together. So what we also have to do is we have to also know that when we use all these different commodities of our soul and our heart together, and we use this spirit heart, when we talk about consciousness, it's exactly the same thing. We have all these millions of different types of conscious that some are accessible and some aren't. But as soon as we start to use this spirit heart, it's like we have this beautiful light consciousness that teaches you how to use this vast array of different types of consciousness. So when we have a problem, we'll it's the way your genetics works in a way, or your DNA, but you'll use sort of certain little bits of consciousness to sort of say, well, that worked last time. I used a certain formula to sort of fix every problem that you get. But when you learn how to use your spirit body, it opens up a different tangibility because you use what is basically a light body that we all have, because all consciousness, I've found, doesn't work with vibration, frequency, tones, and harmonics. So this light consciousness has this vastness to it, and it comes with your spirit body. So it means that you don't get diverted by all the really harsh vibrations, frequency, tones, and harmonics that a lot of people use, because it's more just in the physical body, and it's very easy to have it all pushed around because you're listening to all the vibrations that can be easily played with. Yeah. But when we
These are
use
really
light,
beautiful, fine distinctions, aren't
yeah,
they, in
they
terms of
are.
our inner experience? So
And
if there's an energy body, does the energy, people often talk about an energy body, is that what would be responding to the tones and the frequencies and things like that? So that's different
yeah,
from the spirit body.
it's more in, so your physical body is really, really easily pushed around. So because you've got all these different variances around you and different influences, there's so many different influences that can be pushed around, which is why highly sensitive people find it very difficult then to concentrate, or live in certain areas, or be around certain people, or when people react in a certain way, you feel overawed, or that. So when we use our spirit body, it's a way of stabilizing all our senses, which then stabilize our emotions and feelings. So these are the core to stabilizing all our sensitivities, because without it, we can't, because it's our light body, excuse me, that actually allows the whole different types of bodies that we have to stabilize. And we use this absolutely massive variances because if you just raise your vibration or frequency, then you can actually go completely quiet out of your body. And
Yeah, I see that many times.
then people often get pretty airy fairy and just think the whole world's all beautiful, but you don't see what's actually going on in the real world, you know.
Yeah.
So it just allows us to find a real tangibility of what is really going on right in front of your face. But the best thing is it gives you this larger logic. So you start to see all these different things that are going on. And
So
that's
I want to say something here. This is really for people who are listening, because there are a lot of words here, light body and spirit heart and all of those things. And you may every now and then think, help, I have no idea. Like for a moment, you may think you've got it, and then you think you can't understand anything, and then it comes again. And what I find with this, and especially if you're highly sensitive, you will find this very quickly, that if you listen with your senses, with that sensitivity, don't just listen with your head and your mind. If you get stuck in your head and your mind, it will sound really strange and confusing. But actually, if you listen with more senses, you'll actually know from the inside what David's talking about from the experience. You'll actually experience it as he speaks. And that's actually the only way you can know this stuff, because you could explain all of this, define it all, and draw pictures or whatever for me, and it wouldn't make any difference to me whatsoever. The only thing that makes a difference is that I can know it inside me, and that I can use it, whether I'm fully conscious of that or not. Like some of these things you talk about, I can kind of interpret, but I don't go around saying, I know I need to use my spirit body, but the sense is that I do use it because and you've taught me how to do that, but I'm not fully conscious of exactly how that works, but it works. And if it's working, that's great. So I just want to say that, because there are a lot of words and definitions and things, and these are very important because you can see the precision with which David is talking about a world that most of us are aware of, but not very precise about. And at the same time, I don't want it to confuse anyone. Just like learn how to read this information that's being shared with you in the way that is so natural for a highly sensitive person.
the other thing is too, Sarah, it goes back to we don't try and tell everybody all the jargon of everything that's going on all the time, because we just go in little increments as we go, and we learn how to sense little things at a time. And when you learn to experience something, it's really something that often it has such a large meaning. Sometimes you cannot explain it sometimes, because it has such a vast effect on you, and you're trying to say, well, it's just bloody working, but that's really, sometimes that's all you need to know.
Well, that's what I love about what you do, is that you've given names to things that I've never really needed to know, but there's a real beauty in the names. Sometimes, you say things like commodities, and then you say resources, and you say, creativity, and you essential depths and assumptions. For a long time, I had no idea what you were talking about. And then I realized, okay, depths has to do with deep, and ascension has to do with higher. And this is all about different kinds of energy. And little by little, I came to be more and more curious and kind of like understand it at a richer level. And so that's the experience I want to introduce other people to through these conversations, actually, is to not have to be so linear, or so it's like it's just got to be described like this. Let's learn to speak these different languages. It makes us much more diverse. It makes life much more interesting.
Speaking of that, it's like all you've got to really know is that we're talking to a subconscious part of your spirit sometimes, and it gets it.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
you move.
And then you
And then
change,
you
and that's
move.
it.
And it happens. And the tangibility of it comes on. But
But it's
yeah,
nice to, because people do ask lots of questions about these things. So it's nice to actually at least give some answers to those questions, and create a space where people can go and explore more and learn more about it, and start to identify more precisely within themselves what's what, because we're growing a vocabulary here.
we are. And there is an R. So there's a lot of parts here that we can just make more efficient, because the biggest thing is we've all, in a way, our spirit heart and our spirit soul have separated. And our spirit heart and soul are basically the core foundation of us. Yeah.
So is
So
that what you had to put together again in order to find your true intuition
it
again?
is. It
You
is.
started with that.
It
That's what
is.
you did.
And it's often one of those things, and it's one of those things. It's quite funny because um, although I do my own stuff, I like to read, and it's I don't know how many books I've read, and it's all said, oh, or that happens because of separation, but nobody tells you how or why the separation started. But this is why. When your soul and when your spirit, soul, and heart, they come apart.
Because your heart can't speak to your soul anymore, so it's not connected with your inner
No,
source anymore. And so you
so
feel
you're
like you're not
missing,
connected with yourself, and then you feel lost.
and your spirit, soul, and heart is the core of your intuition. It is the core of your instinct, and basically, your intuition and your instinct is when you're channeling you. You're channeling your own information. That's what you're doing. You're channeling your own information.
Then you know who
Instead
you
of
are.
instead of going up to people and scanning them and saying, "Can you please tell me how you came across that information?" Because that's what we do. We all go up and we try and scan people's, like, especially highly sensitive people, and they know. There's a lot of people who really know they scan, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who don't realize how much they do scan. And they just walk around scanning all day. And
So this means people talk about, oh, the answers are inside and things like that, which is not terribly helpful. But this actually is how that happens, that you're connected with your own inner source. And so you can find answers and you can find information because the right bits of you are connected up with the right bits of you.
It is the foundation. Like, if you're going to meditate, yeah, it shows you that you can actually meditate on your own self, because otherwise it's very easy to meditate and then bring in all the stuff and all the clatter of whatever's going on in a room. Yeah. So it's about
Yeah, so
finding
it
what's
makes
more important.
everything work. Really what we're
Yeah,
saying is it makes everything work. Simple as that.
basically, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good place to end, isn't it? Thank you, David.
You're welcome.